So hopefully it works this time.
Yeah, I hope so too. We had a bit of a nightmare yesterday trying to do it. That was my Wi-Fi,
Yes.
I think. Okay, so
Well,
welcome to Golf Shop Insider, everybody. It's the all-new Golf Shop Insider podcast, and where we take a close look at the latest market sales data, give you some context, and help you understand what it means for your business. So there's a bit of retail advice, Phil, category insights, and special guests, which we haven't had any yet, but we're going to get some special guests on. And normally some golfing disaster
you're special,
tales.
Jules.
And normally some golfing disaster tales, which are normally mine, but no one's been playing golf recently, have they? So we can't start with those, unfortunately, today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When was the last time you played golf?
Actually, last week, but it was only last week, but only a short comp. You just run out there when you can, but yeah, it's really tricky. But I think the weather's looking up, spring is coming, and you can just feel everyone's getting a little bit right. The comps are coming up on the calendar, so. Yeah.
Well, it is weird that I don't know if it's the air changes, but you can just kind of there's almost like a different smell in the air. I know it sounds a bit odd, but it definitely does feel as if spring's just kind of turned up. The trees are looking budding and shooting and all that kind of stuff. So it does feel different now, whereas it feels like it's been an awfully depressing long winter, and kind of it was a really wet, horrible autumn. Coming in as well, so not good. So hopefully get out.
No one's felt it more than the on-course pro shops, quite frankly.
No.
It's been pretty miserable. And that's what we're kind of here to sort of just help people out with today. There's a bit of a Debbie Downer out there when we don't talk to our customers. I don't know if you've spoken to anybody, Phil. I think people
I've spoken to a
fair
few
on a lot of excess stock, but
the stock's an interesting one. I've been out seeing quite a few retailers, typically some of the bigger ones, and I've been to the States, I've been to Germany, I've been kind of a bit more globally with some of the retailers, and there is people are talking about stock, but I don't think it's. If you take a slightly longer term view, and I've said this in a few kind of like tweets and stuff, if you take a longer term view on it, it's not actually as bad as it feels, but I think people have got used to the last couple of years where they were forced to operate on lower stocks because of supply chain issues. That actually the stock isn't quite as bad as as it might be perceived to be, certainly in units. Now the units and the value are very different. So we just take a snapshot from the end of the year. I'll lay over a couple of bit of detail. So at the end of the year, the UK market was up about 5%. So actually in European terms, it was the best market. Sweden was flat, Germany was down, France was just slightly up, but it was the best market. Predominantly that was delivered by off-course because the second half of the year was pretty crappy. It was wet, and that definitely hit the on-course guys. So the on-course guys were flat and the off-course guys were up. And if we looked at the stock position in units, we take value out of it for the moment. Stock at the end of the year was actually total units was up in every single category except for bags versus 2022. So everyone's sitting there going, holy cow, I've got a shed load of bags, way more than I'm used to in my near-term memory. We've got a problem with stock. But if you just take a step back for a moment and then have a look at what it was compared to 2019, the end of the pandemic, before the pandemic, apologies, there's 7 categories that were up. There's actually 10 categories that are down relative to the pandemic. Now, the things that were up were things like balls up 20%, gloves up 1%, so that's not too bad. Wedges up 40%. So those are the key ones which are up. So most of those are consumable. So with we recognise there's more people playing and there's more golf going, there's more being spent. It's not surprising that some of those actually have naturally grown because we need to have more requirement for them.
Yeah,
if you look at things like woods, they're up about 10%, and putters and wedges were the worst ones, and so wedges really have had a big dump of stock in there. But and shoes weren't great; they're up 14%. And if I was to pick a category that I think most people feel glum about, I do get a sense that shoes are the worst one. And so that does seem to be the one where people have got a lot too much stock, and in pretty much all measures, it's 20% up versus 22. It's 14% up 2019. So that is bad. Whereas everything else is kind of slightly justifiable, maybe, and in a longer term context, not too bad. But if you look at nearly all the apparel categories, they're all down. You look at trolleys, they're down. You look at bags, they're down. You look at irons, they're down. So there's a lot of categories actually in units are down. Now the difference is between now and 2019 is ASPs have gone up. So when people are looking at their bank accounts, they're probably going, well, okay, it's quite a different story. Now, that's because obviously the value of everything has got more expensive. So, for instance, in value terms, while units and balls are up 20%, they're actually up 40% in value. And that's possibly where people are also feeling a bit more pressure, just because there's more cash that's gone out. But the only thing I would say about that is that, again, the categories that I mentioned previously, it's the putters and the wedges are really the worst offenders. So those are something that needs to be probably looked at. Balls are up, but if you look in line with where we finished at the end of 2019, balls are up. But versus 2019, they're up 20%, and versus in 2019 in value, they're up 40%. So they are up in real terms. But everything else has gone up 20% roughly in sales value since 2019. So if the value of the stock had gone up 20%, which when we're sitting here now sounds like an awful lot, it's only in line with kind of what's happened. So I think basically from my interpretation of it, there's no reason to press any panic buttons or anything. There's just a change of perspective in terms of there are a couple of categories that seem to be overstocked, and wedges and shoes seem to be two bad areas. Other categories have grown, but that's kind of in line with what's actually happened with them since the pandemic. Yes, everyone's feeling like there's an awful lot more stock since last year because things have changed. And so what's happened is we've kind of slipped back into some of our bad habits that we had shed because it was forced upon us during the pandemic, but we're still sitting on too much stock now. So I think that's kind of where it is. So it's not panic, it's back to where it was. Ideally, we don't want to go back to where we want. We want to be more efficient. And so I would suggest that people do need to obviously monitor that stock position. There is something else to factor in kind of this time of the year. We've got the February data, so I can announce, I haven't put this out on socials or anything, so I can announce so far this year, the market is down 3.9%. Yeah. So all the things that we've talked about, the rain and the weather, we had a really bad kind of end the last 3 months in December, leading up into the categories. In balls, they were down 3%. So you could see that kind of, there was a tail off of activity at the end of last year. And that really has just carried on into this year. And so this year we're down just under 4% to February. So I can tell that today. I'll put that out later today. The categories that in February which were down the most were things like apparel. And actually, one of the biggest drops was consumables. Consumables were down 14% in February, and they're down 5% year to date. So it's just that trend where we saw the balls drop off for the last 3 months of last year, and then it's gone through into this year because
it's purely seasonal, isn't it? It's seasonal and it's weather related. So we've had a bad winter season.
Yeah. I mean, the number of months that we've had, I said, if I have a few more seconds here, I'll put in number of months we had terrible rain. So we've so far February, as a UK as a whole, we had 145% of average rainfall. Yeah. We lost an additional 4 days of golf that we would normally expect to lose. So normally in February you'd have it's a stat that I call where there's more than 1 millimeter of rain that falls, and those are the days where you look outside, it's raining, you think, I'm not going to play today. Whereas you get rain on other days, but it's a shower that you get during it. But when it's a heavy rain day, so actually we had nearly 18 days of hard rain effectively in February, and that's 4 more than usual. That's a lot. And so that's 25% of your playing days kind of lost. That more playing days lost. And so these just kind of little metrics, you just keep nibbling away at the participation. So there's less sunshine, there's more rain. January was about average. If you go back to some of the other months, some were drier, some were wetter. But December had 148% of rainfall again. So you've had months where you're getting 50% more rain than you would expect. That's put the courses into bad shape. It's just got people out of the habit. So, I'm looking outside, there's a bit of sun, there's some green shoots. Hopefully that's positive. We have to remember that if you're going to have some bad months, January and February are the good ones. We've only effectively had 10% of even though it's a sixth of the year, it's only 10% of the revenue. So April and May are the two big ones. You really want to have a good March to get people into the habit. But the one thing I would say is that we've shown consistently through this pandemic that golf is really resilient, and B, there is pent-up demand. So when there are periods where people aren't spending money, they do seem to come out in force when they're able to. So if and we have seen that consistently post-lockdown. So, the number of the economic pressures that were set upon us, that people were fearful, aren't as in effect now. We've got energy prices coming down. We've got talks of rate cuts coming down. Although the things like Ukraine's still going on, it's not as evident in the press and things. And so we're kind of moving on to other things now. But I think hopefully the resilience of the trade will deliver. And if we get a few months of good weather, we could still have got the chance of having a good year. Now, I will caveat that, but to just make everyone aware, and hopefully when people did their planning this year, that we've got Olympics and a football championships. Now, historically, we've shown that has a negative impact on the market in the region of about 1.5%. So if we'd had the same year as last year, I would expect, just as a standard year, that we'll be 1.5% down potentially as a result of those activities.
That's sound a lot, does it? How's that going to, if you're a pro shop, should you be worried about that? Should you be proactive? What we say?
Well, with all these things, it's just unless something's dramatically changed in your business, unless have you made the shop bigger? Have you engaged have you put a sales activity process in place to engage with the customers more? Are you forecasting to pull more customers in because you've got some promotions to attract more members or more visitors? Yeah. If you're not doing any of those kind of sales activation processes, then you would normally expect your sales to be, plus or minus maybe 5%, depending on the season. Now, if we've got an Olympics or a football championship, we can know that it's going to have a negative impact. So whatever your number was, it would probably be 1 or 2% down, just because of that. The weather can have an impact. We've had an extraordinarily bad period of weather. You'd hope that maybe what that will do is we'll create some pent-up demand, and if we're lucky enough to get a good start to the summer, and normally the spring summers are usually pretty strong in the UK, so you'd be hopeful that it can't rain forever. So you'd hope that we would get into a good, March, April, May, that then demand would be strong. There's some really good products and stuff out there. There's quite a lot of positive energy. So you'd hope that's good. So I think it was just, unless you're doing some dramatic sales activation process, you just got to expect this year it's going to be a bit flatter. So you still need to order similar amounts as to what you had last year to satisfy your demand, but you need to make sure that you're factoring any stock that you were in excess of last year in those orders. And it's the same old thing that we talk about every year that gets ignored by some people and then adhered to by others. It's just part of that planning process and making sure that we saw through the pandemic that when you didn't have the stock, people missed out on sales. We've seen either end kind of the pandemic that when you've got too much stock, you're going to get your margins hit ultimately because you're going to have products clear out. So you should just understand how many sales you're likely to make, and then factor in any sales activation processes that you're going to engage in to try and drive more sales, and then buy accordingly. And then just understand this year you're likely to have a slightly softer year because of some of the other distractions that are going on in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, that's great. Anything else that people need to be thinking? What if they've got, obviously we're March, we're going into the season. What if they are sitting on excess stock, if you're a golf retailer? What should you do now this March to tackle that for the season?
So I don't think anyone's going to be sitting on too much excess stock now, because we're sitting at the front end of the season. Mm-hmm. The excess stock really, to me, only is truly an indicator at the end of the season, because the excess stock I've got now, I've still got the opportunity to sell. And what it means is it probably means I will do less ordering or reordering to clear that stock through. So we've just got to make sure that we're being active in selling the products that we've got, as opposed to selling the stuff that we haven't got. So that's just, making sure the displays are appropriate, making sure that the sales team, if it's an individual, what you're trying to sell. If you've got a team, what they're wanting to sell. We want to try and get the stuff that we've got in stock sold first. So, if there's the opportunity to sell that as opposed to sell another product, sell the stuff, sell what you've got as opposed to what you haven't got. Yeah. And then just make sure that you're not parrot fashion, just copying what you did last year. When you place those reorders, because inevitably you will need to reorder stuff, just make sure that you factor in the stuff you've got to try and clear that through first, and then get the new stuff in. So it's I would be. You had excess stock at the end of last season, but now we're into the start of the season. That excess stock should be very much at the forefront of the plan of the stuff we're pushing through. So it shouldn't be excess at the moment when you've got a year, 90% of the season still to go as to sell. You're now into the sales opportunity, so it just needs to be factored into the plan. So, I mean, making sure the shop's looking good and making sure you're engaging with customers. Have you communicated with them? Are you, I think the key thing now that everyone should be focusing on is you need traffic. And so everything should be orientated around sales, customer activation, you'll have the regular customers that will play through the winter. Those guys and girls will carry on playing during the season. What you really want to do is you want to make sure all those, irregular guys that maybe or girls play that will only typically play March through September, or April, May through September. Have a look at what processes you can put in place to activate those. So it's customer engagement, it's a little bit of marketing, it's a little bit of communication out to those customers to try and get them back into the habit again. Because the one thing that a poor start to season does is there is a percentage of customers that won't get activated into the habit of golf. And what you need to be doing is getting them into the habit of golf, because if you then get the players playing, then you get traffic walking in through the dock, you then got people who are going to buy the product. So it's probably as much around sales activation at the moment, just that this next few weeks, just getting those people back into the habit when they're actually able to get back on the golf course, because it's not chucking it down rain.
Look at all the tools you've got available to you, everything from email newsletters, your print around the shop, Xcaddy app. Any way you can communicate with your customers, just engage now. Now's the time, isn't it?
Yeah. Tweets, Facebook, Facebook, Twitter, X, social media. Just, go. I tell you what, another thing is, you've got your Xpos system, just do your sales analysis, look at the 50 customers that were the most active last year, just drop them an email. Into the shop. You might say, oh, well, I don't want to do that. Do you know what? Yeah, do it. If you've got 50, recognize who those top customers are. If you're not seeing them on a regular basis, just drop them an email. I mean, sounds like really noddy stuff, but ultimately, look after those guys that, spend money with you. So,
make sure they don't go anywhere else. That's the key thing, isn't it?
Yes, that's very true.
Any other final words of wisdom? There was some great stuff there, great takeaways. Anything about the February data that people just need to sort of take away? Or are we going to go, right, this is March, the weather's changing, February was down, but March, this is, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I mean, we're down year to date. It is a whole different ball game. I don't know what the weather stats are for March. You have the vibe. We've definitely seen more sunnier days. The golf courses have been getting open. I think we just need to be activating customers now. Yes, we're down 4%. Off the back of a bad finish to last year and a poor start to this year. We're only 4% down this year. There's plenty of time to recover that in March, April, May. If last year July had 175% of rainfall, we could have a really great July, and you'd make up nearly everything you've lost in these last 2 months. Yeah. So there's still plenty of the year. So don't panic. Make sure the shop's looking good. Activate with your customers. Make sure you're on plan. Maybe look at scheduling some activation processes around the Olympics or around the football, because you're going to have to deal with that as a variable which you can't control. So what can you do? Embrace it. Use it.
Sweepstakes and stuff like that.
Yeah, just do something like that. Do have some competitions or something based around it. Just do something, just engage with it and talk about it. That there's the Olympics and there's still golf.
You were just talking to yourself then.
Sorry, I was talking to myself. I don't know what points you disappeared. I apologise.
Okay, but we're kind of wrapping it up anyway, aren't we? You were giving us some great advice just about the end of the year. So, not at the end of the year, but what people should be doing and embracing the sporting events that are coming, because they're non-golf. So it's really important to get behind them, get the TV on in your golf shop, get some sweepstakes going, and just embrace the Euros and everything like that. So just have a great season.
Yeah, put some hard yards in now to just get them activated. But Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we hit most of it there, but yeah, still loads ahead. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll report back, but I still, plenty of optimism, and certainly the way things, a couple of the categories have done well so far this season. It's we've got plenty of. We're not short of good kind of product there. I mean, clubs were actually up in February, so. That was driven mainly by, I think it was woods, wasn't it? Yeah, woods and putters, which year to date putters are well up and woods are well up. So those are two categories that they kind of fire the imagination with the drivers because people like to hit it further. But still plenty of reasons for optimism. We just got to crack on.
That's all we need to know, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we'll come back to people, I guess, in a month or two with some more market news, hopefully next month.
Yeah.
And we'll just keep people up to date with that during the season. But
Okay.
I hope everyone's found this really useful. If you've managed to keep up with our internet connection, it's like we live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. But anyway, we'll get there. And anyway, any questions? If you want to hear any specific content in these podcasts, please just let us know. Thanks very much, everybody. Cheers, Phil.
Cheers. Bye, Jules.
Take care. Bye.